I'm DJ Molles, and I'm the author of Wolves. My book Wolves takes place in kind of a post-apocalyptic landscape. It takes place about a decade after a world-ending event that I refer to as the Skyfire, and I don't give much details for that. The story centers around the main character by the name of Huxley, and he's been on the road searching for his daughter who was kidnapped by a group called the Slavers. All he knows about the Slavers is that they go east. He doesn't know anything else about them. So he's trying to track them down, but he's reached the end of his rope. He's dying in the desert and it passes out. And when he wakes up, he's being helped by a very unlikely character, kind of a weird character by the name of Jay. And Jay gives him water, brings him back to life, and at that point in time, they have a frank conversation, and Jay says, I don't know what you were going east for, but you're not going to find it. If you're looking for a person, they're gone. You need to give up. You need to lose that sense of hope. And so at that point in time in the story, all that's left for them is that they're just going to go east, and they're going to try to find the people, and they're going to try to inflict damage. And that becomes their sole mission. So I decided to bring the Western genre into the kind of post-apocalyptic genre. I thought it was a natural progression, just given what I had put forward as the society-ending circumstances, which was just the removal of all technology. I thought it was natural that everything would be back to an 1800s, 1700s era style of living. So that was kind of how the Western genre got started in the story. Wolves was written from kind of a dark place for me personally, but rather than kind of shying away from it, I really accepted it and found it almost cathartic to get those things out of me and on the paper. There were one or two scenes in the book that I found a little difficult to write, and that was usually during periods where there were violence towards women and children, which gave me some pause to think about, but I pushed through, and I think the story was better for it. A lot of the study and research that I did with the book was geography-wise, because the characters start in the Southwest, and they kind of journey throughout the course of the book through to the Southeast. And I wanted to avoid putting them in places that people knew too well. I didn't want there to be any points of reference for the reader. I wanted to keep kind of a desolate feel to the story, so I didn't want to have a point of reference for the reader to say, hey, I know that place, this is how it looks. So a lot of the research that I did was actually keeping them away from areas where other people might be overly familiar. In the story, one of the civilizations that's coming out of the East is the Eastern Democratic States, and they're pushing west. And I did find it interesting, the conflict between the Eastern Democratic States and the Riverland nations, and where the war was kind of stemming from that we kind of get to see towards the end of the novel. And I would be interested in exploring that a little bit further on, perhaps with another book. The character I identified with the most, I would probably have to go with the obvious answer and say Huxley. Now, Huxley wasn't patterned after me. I didn't write him thinking of myself, but a great inspiration for a large part of his character was his love for his daughter. And during the writing of this book, I had just had my firstborn child, and that played into a lot and inspired a lot of how I viewed Huxley in this book, and that always remained true for me and felt true as I wrote the book. For the book design, I knew that I wanted the revolver to play a prominent role in the design, because if you read the book, you see how much that violence plays in there. And I wanted to speak to that violence, and I thought the revolver would be a good way of speaking to that. But I also wanted the design to be a little subdued. I wanted it to be a little quiet. I didn't want a lot of flashy colors. I didn't want a lot of bright things. I wanted to make the reader know that this was not just a book about running and gunning. It was a book that dealt with some darker matters. I don't think I can be an author that writes in the post-apocalyptic genre and not have thought about what I would do in this scenario. The one thing I would say to up people's chances of surviving the fall of civilization is just a mindset change. There's a quote floating around on the internet that I've come to like, and it says, "No one's coming to save you." And I think people need to take responsibility for themselves and understand that even at its best, there aren't any entities out there that are going to be capable of saving everybody, and you really should take responsibility for yourself. Wolves is about a lot of different things. I think primarily it's kind of a look at what happens to a normal man when you take away everything that's valuable to him, when you take away hope, when you take away love, what happens to him as a person. But I think on another level, the book's a lot about where does evil come from? Is it something that is an outside force that acts on you, or is it something that is inside you as a person and just requires the right set of circumstances to break out? There's a lot of books in the post-apocalyptic genre, it seems, that are really just there for titillation. It's just action, and there's not a whole lot there. And I wanted a potential reader to look at my book, and I wanted them to see that, yeah, there's action in this book. There's candy, you might say, but there's also a lot of meat there if you're hungry for it.